Up next in the broadcast, Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo will have to wait until next week to see if he will be confirmed by the National Assembly, as lawmakers agreed to postpone the vote after a contentious afternoon. Former Vice President of Korean Air and one of the firm's heirs, Cho Hyun-ah, receives a one-year prison sentence for obstructing aviation safety after her famous nut rage on board a plane last year. A marathon day of negotiations yields Russian President Vladimir Putin's agreement to a ceasefire in Ukraine, but skeptics wonder whether the deal will be any different from a previous ceasefire that didn't work. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News. Live from Seoul, I am Kang Tae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with a dramatic day at Korea's National Assembly over the confirmation hearing of the nation's new Prime Minister nominee.
After some heavy confrontation, rival parties agreed to put off the plenary session until next Monday to dodge a head-on conflict over a vote for the president's pick. Our Park Ji-won has more.
The country's two main rival parties have agreed to postpone a vote on the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo after a contentious afternoon that led them to call off the session until next Monday. Earlier in the day, lawmakers from the main opposition party boycotted parliamentary activities. They were protesting the confirmation of the nominee in committee this Thursday afternoon, with only lawmakers from the ruling Saenuri Party unilaterally voting to move the vote onto the full assembly.
이완구 후보자의 사퇴를 국민의 이름으로 촉구한다. 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 새누리당의 일방적 경과보고서 채택을 강력히 규탄한다. 규탄한다. 규탄한다.
Earlier in the morning, the ruling Saenuri Party had urged the opposition party to cooperate and allow the vote to proceed as scheduled in order to avoid a vacuum in state affairs.
Even long before I was elected floor leader, when the nominee was still the floor leader of the party, both parties had agreed that the full assembly would vote on the nominee following the two-day confirmation hearing.
However, the main opposition party said it hoped to delay the vote to sometime later this month, given the various allegations surrounding the nominee's past.
Since I have worked with the nominee who was my previous counterpart on many issues at the Assembly, I really wanted him to come through the confirmation hearing well. Unfortunately, and very regrettably, he has fallen short of people's expectations.
The ruling Saenuri Party holds a majority in the Assembly, and if it wanted to, it could go ahead with the vote on its own. However, experts say it's not likely, as the presidential office has already been criticized for its lack of compromise and communication, especially with personnel matters. The burden of pushing through the confirmation might be too heavy for the administration and potentially cripple future Assembly sessions. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, with the ruling and opposition parties agreeing to a plenary session being held on Monday, it now looks like President Park Geun-hye will carry out the rest of her cabinet reshuffle early next week. Our Cho Hyun-ah has more.
On Thursday, the spokesperson at the presidential office of Cheongwade said President Park stands by the principle of carrying out the reshuffles after the prime minister nominee is approved and recommends her cabinet. The National Assembly Speaker has said the parliament will vote on Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo on Monday, with or without the opposition party present. That means the president's shakeups are likely to occur the same day or the next. With her economic revitalization plan and reform drive in need of a boost and her approval ratings hitting an all-time low, the president is expected to waste no time appointing people to get state business on track. Reports of Korean ambassador to China Kwon Young-se's pending replacement Thursday roused speculation that Kwon, one of President Park's confidants, may be named the new presidential chief of staff. Current Chief of Staff Kim Ki-chun is widely speculated to step down after completing the reorganization of the presidential office. 2 to 3 cabinet ministers are likely to be replaced. A ruling party lawmaker close to the president, Yoo Ki-jun, is the highly anticipated candidate for Oceans Minister, while the Unification and Transport Ministers are other positions that could also be changed. President Park, who had named special advisors to bolster communication in running the country, is also set to announce a lineup of her political advisors. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
The verdict for the nut rage scandal is in, and it looks like it will be 1 year behind bars for former Vice President of Korean Air, Cho Hyun-ah. The Seoul court sentenced the business group's heiress for obstructing aviation safety over an improperly served bag of nuts in first class. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
A Seoul District Court sentenced former Vice President of Korean Air, Cho Hyun-ah, to 1 year in prison for obstructing aviation safety after she ordered a taxiing plane to return back to the gate last December. Her lawyers are looking into the possibility of appealing the charge. Cho, the eldest daughter of the chairman of Korean Air, faced 5 charges ranging from obstruction of justice through deception and changing the plane's flight path, which carries the heaviest sentence of up to 10 years in prison with no possibility of suspension or parole. Cho pleaded innocent to the charge, arguing the runway should not be considered part of the flight path. Ahead of the ruling, she submitted 6 letters of apology to the judges, appealing for leniency. Cho had ordered a senior crew member to deplane in New York last December over a lapse in proper procedure for serving nuts to passengers in first class. The Seoul-bound flight from New York was heading for the runway before she ordered it to return back to the gate. This case has gripped the Korean public from the start, as many see it as another glaring example of misbehavior by a member of a conglomerate or so-called chaebol family, who believe that with their power and influence, they can act and do as they please. Typically, local courts have gone relatively easy on chaebol leaders convicted of crimes by granting them pardons or handing down light punishment. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
There's heated argument over in Japan over how Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will present the face of Tokyo to the world. In an upcoming statement to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, Abe said he would omit key phrases about Japan's wartime atrocities. But as our Connie Kim tells us, some lawmakers want the speech to be approved by the parliament through consensus.
A debate is raging in Japan's parliament over a statement to be delivered by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in August to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Last month, Abe indicated he will not use certain terms such as colonial rule and aggression, deep remorse, or heartfelt apology, which were included in Tokyo's 1995 statement by then Prime Minister Domichi Murayama. The country's main opposition Democratic Party has labeled Abe's remarks intolerable and demanded the content of his statement be shared with and discussed in parliament, not just within the confines of Abe's cabinet.
Don't you think it's necessary to discuss the contents of the statement with parliament for the sake of national consent?
It's hard to pass a resolution in parliament. We'll announce a statement under our cabinet.
And in a rare move, the new Komeito Party, part of Abe's ruling coalition, has voiced its concerns, saying the past statements were announced after consultation with lawmakers.
The statement is accepted at home and abroad as the basic position of Japan. It's common sense that a consensus is reached within the coalition parties.
Adding to the conflict and confusion, the chairman of Abe's ruling Liberal Democratic Party's General Counsel, Toshihiro Nikai, said it's only sensible that the cabinet coordinate the upcoming statement with different parties. The international community has been calling on Japan to address its historic past wrongdoings and issue a sincere apology. And with Japanese lawmakers calling for Abe to strike a forgiving tone, analysts say the Japanese leader is under growing pressure to make a heartfelt apology for Japan's past wrongdoings. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Che-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime News, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Global credit rating agency Moody's says lower oil prices may not necessarily be a boon for the global economic growth. It says the effects of falling oil prices will be offset by the slumping Eurozone economies and a slowdown in economies like China, Japan, and Russia. It did say, however, that lower oil prices coupled with what it called a favorable economic environment in the U.S. will benefit the U.S. economy, encouraging consumer as well as corporate spendings. For years now, Korean chip makers have stayed among the top 5 in the global DRAM market, and for the first time last year, their combined market share topped 70%, thanks largely to technological advances and steady demand for the memory chips that are used in virtually every electronic device. Our Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
Korean memory chip makers dominated the global DRAM market with a share of more than 70% during the September to December period of last year. The combined market share of Korean companies during the period is the highest recorded, of 0.7% from the previous quarter. Tech giant Samsung Electronics held more than 41% of the market, while SK hynix took up a near 28%. They were closely followed by U.S. chip maker Micron Group. Technological advances were key to the leading performances, says market tracker DRAM Exchange. Samsung Electronics produces smaller products than its rivals. Its 20 and 23 nanometer chips are 1/50th the width of a human hair. Also, SK hynix improved the manufacturing process for its 25 nanometer chips by reducing the number of defective products. Their high performance is expected to continue this year as well on the back of steady chip prices. The global market for DRAM memory chips is expected to increase 13% from last year to nearly $53 billion. As of Thursday morning, prices for DDR2 were traded at around $1.24, down 0.3% from the previous day. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense budget was the 10th largest in the world last year. It came in at $34.4 billion, just behind Germany with roughly $44 billion, according to a report from the International Institute for Strategic Studies. The United States topped the list with $643 billion, followed by China and Saudi Arabia. North Korea did not make it into the list, but the institute says Pyongyang has made great strides in enhancing its missile program and weapons of mass destruction. It added that as a result of the 2008 financial crisis, NATO and European countries have significantly reduced their forces, while Asian countries are investing more in defense. Well, more people in Korea are reporting child abuse and more reported cases are being brought to justice. According to the Welfare Ministry, nearly 18,000 cases of child abuse were registered last year, of which roughly 9,800 cases were confirmed and flagged for monitoring. That's about a 44% increase from the number in 2013. Experts attribute the increase to a special law that went into effect last September that strengthens punishments for child abuse. They added that more people have become aware of what constitutes child abuse from increased media coverage and public attention to the issue.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a fresh ceasefire agreement in the latest diplomatic effort to halt the deadly conflict in eastern Ukraine.
For more, we turn to Paul Yi at the News Center. Paul, needless to say, this is a welcome announcement, and it comes after marathon peace talks in Belarus with both Moscow and Kiev shaking hands.
That's right. The heads of state from Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia had been locked in negotiations for more than 15 hours, which lasted through the night. And just when hopes of a breakthrough were lost, this new ceasefire deal emerged. On Thursday, French President François Hollande and his Ukrainian counterpart Petro Poroshenko said that a comprehensive political solution had been reached during the four-way talks. Putin said that the truce would take effect as early as this Sunday, while pledging that Ukraine would regain control of its borders.
First, we agreed on the end of firing from midnight on the 15th of February. Second, the position that I consider to be extremely important is the removal of heavy weapons from the line of confrontation for the Ukrainian forces, and from today's confrontation line for the Ukrainian forces, as well as from the line named on September 19th last year in the Minsk agreements for the rebels.
The summit discussions came as fighting raged on in the east of the country. On Wednesday, more than 20 Ukrainian soldiers and civilians were reportedly killed, including those in the rebel-held area of Donetsk. The conflict between government forces and pro-Russian rebels has already cost the lives of at least 5,300 people over the last 10 months. And shifting to the U.S., President Barack Obama has laid out a proposal to bring the fight to Islamic State as threats from the militant group show no signs of slowing. The request marks the first time a U.S. president has asked for congressional approval to go to war since 2002, ahead of the Iraq invasion. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
U.S. President Barack Obama has made a formal request to Congress to authorize military force against a terrorist group that calls itself Islamic State.
This resolution reflects our core objective to destroy ISIL. It supports the comprehensive strategy that we've been pursuing with our allies and our partners.
In a televised speech, Obama noted the military campaign is a difficult mission, but said the U.S. is on the front foot and IS is going to lose. The request does not call for the deployment of ground troops, although a separate letter to Congress did state that it will be limited to rescue operations or the use of special operations forces to take military action against the extremist group's leadership. While there's general support for the plan, the Republicans want stronger measures, and some Democrats say the resolution goes too far. If the request is approved, it would authorize a military campaign for 3 years without geographical restrictions. It would also be the first war authorization since then-President George W. Bush sought authority to wage war in Iraq in 2002. The U.S. has conducted airstrikes against IS targets in Iraq and Syria since August last year, leading a coalition of Western and Arab nations. Obama said that although existing statutes provide him with the authority to take these actions, Congress backing would show the world that the U.S. is united in its resolve to crush IS. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And turning back to Europe, Greek officials and EU finance ministers failed to reach an agreement after a crucial meeting in Brussels on Wednesday. This as Athens is seeking to extend a €240 billion bailout deal before the deadline at the end of this month. The new leftist Greek government blames the deal for its economic hardship and is demanding a reduction of its debt. But Germany, the biggest contributor to the Greece's bailout, is not willing to give in unless sufficient conditions are met. Eurogroup Chairman Göran Dijsselbloem said more time was needed.
And we discussed the possibility of an extension. For some, it was clear that that is the preferred option, but we haven't quite come to that conclusion as yet. The institutions have made quite clear that they stand ready to work with the Greek authorities, but it needs a political conclusion first for the institutions to start that kind of work.
The negotiating parties have another chance next Monday to try and hammer out a potential deal before Greece runs out of time with its European creditors. Meanwhile, in Athens, thousands rallied in front of the Greek parliament in support of the government's anti-austerity stance. And finally, justice has been served. A court in Italy handed down a guilty verdict and a 16-year jail sentence to the runaway captain of the doomed cruise liner, the Costa Concordia. Francesco Scatillo was convicted of multiple charges of manslaughter and causing a shipwreck, which has become one of the highest-profile maritime disasters in recent years. He and his defense team requested a plea bargain, which was denied. They've already said they'll appeal the verdict. Costa Cruises was also jointly ordered to pay a total of €30,000 in compensation to each of the ship's passengers. After the verdict was read, many of the survivors and victims' relatives expressed their disappointment, calling the punishment too lenient.
I think that they could make a lot more. They decided to balance the judgment between, Scatino responsibilities and the compensation for passengers. They could do a lot more, and probably they will, because we're gonna abuse them.
Scatino was at the helm in 2012 when the Costa Concordia moved too close to shore and crashed into rocks off the Tuscan island of Giglio. He had fled the giant ship, abandoning his 4,200 passengers and crew before they could be rescued. A total of 32 people were lost in the disaster. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Remember back in August when South Korea won the Little League World Series? Well, the team they faced in the finals, Jackie Robinson West, has been punished for cheating. Little League International issued a statement after months of allegations saying the team had cheated by recruiting players that lived outside of the team's boundaries, stripping them of their U.S. title. Now, placing blame on Jackie Robinson West's adult administrators, they called it a heartbreaking decision, adding that the children should still be proud of their experience in the tournament. Now for Thursday's KBL action, the first of the doubleheader takes us to the tip-off down in Busan. The KT Sonic Boom and LG Sakers were neck and neck until the Sakers were able to pull ahead in the final period. KT got their fourth straight loss as LG picked up the back-to-back win. Meanwhile, the Samsung Thunders and Anyang KGC were tangled in a low-scoring affair. But Leon Williams and Oh Se-gun helped KGC come out ahead for the victory. Over to the V-League, there were two matches played in Incheon, first to the ladies. The visiting Hyundai ENC Hill State completely dominated the Hunguk Life Pink Spiders. Raimova had a hot hand, serving up 7 aces to lead the Hill State to their third sweep in a row. And now to the men, no luck for the home teams as the KEPCO Big Storm took the 4-setter against the Korean Air Jumbos. Zurich and Jun once again powered the attack as KEPCO won their 8th straight match. And moving on, Tiger Woods is taking time off after 2 really poor performances in his starts this year. So how long is he going to be out? With a missed cut at the Phoenix Open last month and a first-round withdrawal at Farmers Insurance last week, the 14-time major champion said he won't return until he's, quote, tournament ready. Woods, who added that he expects to be back very soon, was referring to the Honda Classic on February 26th, so that means he'll be out for at least 2 weeks. And finally, the Laureus World Sports Awards Sportsman of the Year nominees were announced. Here are the favorites. Footballer of the Year, Cristiano Ronaldo. F1 champion, Lewis Hamilton. 8-time major champion of tennis, Novak Djokovic. And twice major winner in 2014, golfer Rory McIlroy are up for the men. Meanwhile, headlining for the women is tennis star Serena Williams, who will vie for her record-tying 4th Laureus at the award ceremony on April 15th. And that wraps it up for sports. Your weather's up next. Good night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the latest weather outlook. At the moment, we are under mostly clear skies due to a high pressure front from China, and it's about -3 degrees here in the capital, but wind chills are making it feel like -8, so make sure to bundle up when heading outdoors. Also, dry weather advisories continue for the Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces and parts of Gyeonggi-do as well. Humidity levels have dipped to as low as 17%. Well, numbers should remain below seasonal averages through tomorrow, so morning lows are shaping up to be colder than today, but daytime highs should be similar under clear skies. Plus, the air quality index will hit the average range. And looking ahead, the good news is that warm air will move in on Saturday, leading to mild conditions, but there is a chance of flurries or showers in the central regions on Sunday, which should give way to nationwide rainfall on Monday. On to Friday's readings. Seoul starts off the morning at -6 before reaching 3 in the afternoon. Gwangju and Daegu hit 6. Meanwhile, Jeju tops out at 8. Snow is expected on Dokdo while Mount Kumgang reaches -9. That'll do it for now, but more updates coming up after midnight. See you then.
Thank you very much, Po-kyung, and that's Primetime News for this Thursday. I am Kang Chiri. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.